Hello, tech friends, and thank you for tuning into Emerging Technologies in Business, where we take a deep dive into different technologies that are impacting businesses today and in the very near future. I'm your host, Brock Riney, and this podcast is brought to you by Kincannon XR. Let's talk tech. Hey, everybody. Welcome back for another episode. Today, I am joined by the returning Sam Sprigg from Organics.com. They're your source for the latest news and info in the world of XR. If you haven't gotten a chance to see Sam's latest article reviewing the Argo AR headset, I highly recommend it, and I'll be pinning it into this episode. So, Sam, thanks for coming back for a 2.0 of Emerging Technology Conversations. How is everything? I know you just came back from CES. How's everything in your world, my good sir?
Yeah, thank you for having us back, Brock. It's good. It's good. I was just saying, this feels like the first week after what was just a whirlwind at CES. So this is the first week where I've really kind of had time to, probably take stock and actually write up what I was, seeing there. But it was cool. That was the first time I've ever been to that event. First time I've been to Vegas as well. And just the whole thing, the whole thing is just on another level. The event, you can see why they have the event there. It was just ridiculous. It was like everything on steroids, basically. To get, the convention center. Firstly, it's people who haven't been. Probably a lot of people will have been, who are watching this, who know what the deal is. But for people who haven't been, it's split over several locations throughout the city. And Vegas is a huge city anyway, in terms of, it's pretty much just on the Strip, which I guess if you're from Vegas, that's kind of its own contained area, just all the casinos, and that's kind of the main part that people think of when they think of Vegas. But it was just, the convention center itself is kind of one of the focus points. Then you have various hotels along the Strip that all have, their own kind of thing going on. And just at the convention center, you still needed to get a car to shuttle from one exhibit hall to another exhibit hall. I kind of compare it to, I guess in Vancouver, you've got the Vancouver Convention Center, which is one huge building. And then there's also this other place called Canada Place. And it's kind of, they're not even a 5-minute walk from one door to the other. It's a sort of 60-second walk just across the waterfront. But it's still a massive, massive venue. And I think probably the exhibit hall, just one exhibit hall at the Las Vegas Convention Center, is bigger than the entire Vancouver Convention Center. This is just one hall. And so I was there, and one of my colleagues was there, and kind of messaged each other. He's like, "Oh, I'm in the central hall at the convention center." I was like, "Cool, I just got to the convention center, North Hall just now, so I'll see you there in 5 minutes." And then obviously that's how little I knew. So then it literally took me, I just asked them on the desk, how do I get to the central hall? They're like, okay, you go up here, you go along the gangway, and then, then you take the stairs down. I was like, cool, okay. And it took me 30 minutes to walk from the North Hall, which was where all the electric vehicles were, to the Central Hall, which where they had all the metaverse stands and, all this, everything else as well. But it was just nuts. It was literally all on another level of big, and Vegas itself is huge. You're kind of walking down the Strip, it was just overwhelmingly big. But it was very cool. So yeah, that was the initial, the initial kind of impressions of it was just, this is big. And you can see it's the biggest tech conference in the world. It's enormous. And there was I don't know how many attendees. I've seen some things say 45,000. I've seen other things say 100,000. I haven't checked. There was a lot of people, tens of thousands.
There were so many big things that came out this year too, right? So I was just going through the list. And by the way, just to throw this out for our audience, if we do get this podcast on YouTube to 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2023, Kincannon XR will send me to CES in 2024 for me to go do some live interviews. I can meet up with Sam. It'll only take us 30 to 45 minutes to run into each other. But just so everyone knows, take a quick second, pause, hit that subscribe button, send it to your friends and family, and blackmail them into subscribing as well, whatever makes the most sense on your end. But I've got to ask you this, Sam, first thing, and it's so broad, and I know you saw so much, but was there anything that specifically stuck out compared to everything else that you got to see at CES this year?
For me, I was kind of in very much of a rush, but like where I was staying, I was close to the convention center. So rather than like walk down the strip for 40 minutes to get to like the Venetian hotel, which is where part of it was, I would walk to the convention center, then I get the free shuttle down the road. And in walking to the convention center, going through the EV hall, which is where I was, the closest entrance I was near, walked through, and then they had, all the automotive stuff. There was a mining truck from Caterpillar, like, just one of those massive, big, like a toy truck that you would play with as a kid, but like, sort of 3 stories high. And it just stood out purely because I was like, there's a mining truck here in the convention. Like, I don't even know how you ship that sort of thing. I don't even know. Like, it's too big for like a normal road. So I just have no. I mean, they obviously drive it in, but like, firstly, the fact that
back together, I don't know.
I just think they would it would have been one of those wide load transportation things that they move in at 2 a.m. or something. But like,
Right.
well, probably not 2 a.m. because that city doesn't seem to sleep. But it was just nuts, And so you could go sit in the cab of like a mining rig, and then they had this thing where like you queued up and you waited to go on the bed, like in the actual bed where they put all the like rocks or materials or whatever, the mining stuff, and you could just walk in the bed of this truck. And they had this kind of they just happened to have like a sort of augmented reality kind of semi-immersive experience on this big like iPad thing. And so you go stand in the bed of this truck, and you were literally 2 stories up, and then you pick up this iPad and kind of like looked around, and it sort of showed you like Caterpillar's like plan for building, sustainable, mining or oil and gas. That's just whatever like Caterpillar does in that sector. But that for me stood out because I was like, there's a huge like
vehicle.
Yeah, there's a huge toy truck. Like, that's really cool. And I mean, other things like, so like to link the convention center, there's this thing called the Las Vegas Loop, which is, I'm pretty sure, I might be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure it was built by the Boring Company, like Elon Musk's tunneling company. And to get from one hall to the other, so I learned this after I spent 30 minutes walking from one hall to the other. I learned on the way back, I was like, oh, okay, you can just get like a Tesla. And there's these Teslas just constantly going around this loop. They have drivers, which I was surprised by. I thought they would all be autonomous, but there was a driver. Anyway, I think it's in the eyes of safety for such a busy convention. They had drivers, but I'm pretty sure the whole thing can work autonomously. And then they'll just be like, you just go down these escalators and wait in a line, and then a guy in a Tesla would come and pick you up and just shuttle you to the next part of the convention center.
Cool, right?
It was nuts.
It's funny that they had drivers, considering that. But I do understand it. At this point, we're probably not at the point where we're quite safe enough to just be it completely autonomous. But especially 45,000 plus people, you're probably not having everyone who's being responsible. So having an adult driver is probably a good call.
Pretty much. I think that was the reason. Like that, I was at like a press event on a Tuesday evening, and they had like crudités and a free kind of bar and stuff like that, and people were queuing up to get food. And I just saw one guy just like, he was like going up to the end of the buffet, on the buffet side of it, where where the caterers were, and he was just reaching in and like stealing meatballs, and they were like, "Get out of here, man!" And he like just ignored. And I was like, "Okay, if you can't trust essentially it's a member of the public as much as it's like press and media and stuff. It was just a guy just like breaking the rules and just like kind of ignoring everything that they had in place." And it's like, okay, yeah, sure, you're at a tech conference then. If you're going to get guys like that in a car with no driver, and he's like, oh, I'm just going to mess up, because like, I mean, there's not really much can go wrong. Like if you go into the wall of the tunnel, then like, great.
But then you screw it up for everybody too.
Well, yeah,
again, it's the few who ruin it for the many. There's always one idiot who doesn't know how to either control their liquor or their attitude.
Yeah, and
that's the reason why we have drivers.
Exactly, and again, he was the only guy I saw doing that. I was just surprised. It was like
you saw too. That's the problem. Vegas is such a big area, and there's so many people. And, I don't know what the law of averages is. I guess it's if you're left-handed, you're an idiot. Or you're the person who acts like an idiot whenever you go out in public like that. Not calling left-handed people anything less than right-handed people. Both my kids are left-handed, so no. But you get the idea. If you take the one out of one, there's always one person who just cannot wear their big boy pants and act like an adult for even a couple of days. Because we're on vacation, we're having fun, and we're in Vegas, and everything stays there, and so on and so forth.
Pretty much. And I mean, I think a part of it is like, you're at this massive event and it's exciting. Like it is honestly like everyone's excited to be there for the most part. I mean, some people are like, oh, I hate Vegas. I can't be in the city. And I'm like, I was pretty much like, oh, this is my first time here. Like, I just kind of take it in.
To take in.
There's almost too much to take in. But like generally, I think the sense everywhere is just excitement and just like, this is cool to be here. Like this is a pretty, crazy event, and let's just kind of get through it in whatever way we need to. But
right. Absorb what we can.
Pretty much.
So much to take in at that point. I did see also on the vehicle side. So they had an EV boat that was at CES this year, and then my personal favorite was it was the first time that a flying car was announced. And I thought that was the coolest thing. So only $789K though, Sam. So just hop right on. We'll go to the bank later. We'll put our deposit down, and then we'll fly back and forth all day long. I thought that was cool. I'd give my left foot for a flying car, but I feel like there's so many more problems that come in when you start thinking about that. Like, if that truly goes to mass adoption, what are we going to do? Have air traffic controllers for traffic? How's that going to work?
I mean, I guess you just have to trust in the system that they, I guess the way I sort of see that sort of stuff, the only way I see it working is like in either in like Minority Report, the way the cars kind of worked in that, where they're all just in this, that's essentially the goal of, automated driving, is that like all the cars in the network speak to each other. So, you could undertake someone at 90 kilometers an hour and they could be going 70, because the cars all know what the other's doing. I don't know if that's some sort of advanced form of real-time blockchain technology where the cars are kind of all communicating in the same way and like nothing can kind of alter whatever is going on. But I mean, I think that's the only way it could work. You couldn't, like you say, you couldn't trust everyone to get behind the wheel of their own personal flying car and not trust that they wouldn't go to their friend, like, do you want to see how high this thing can go? And then they're up in like the actual commercial airliner airspace and then screwing things up, like
or someone does a barrel roll into a building or something, just trying to steal off. Everyone's an idiot, unfortunately. Not everybody, but again, the few ruin it for the many.
I think, so I think the sort of the Minority Report style or the iRobot style driving of, autonomous cars is more likely, that seems more likely to me than, say, like, the Fifth Element style of, like Bruce Willis in a flying cab, like being able to just drive it out of traffic and what, I don't know. Like,
I don't think we'll ever see that. I really think if we ever get to a flying car, true adoption, you won't even have the ability to control it realistically, which I don't think we should, honestly. Realistically, like, let's give that over. I'm sorry, there's a lot of people who don't like to give machines control because of impending AI doom, but long term, I trust an AI machine to make a better decision than anybody else on the road. We've already heard we've all gone through defensive driving at some point. Think about going through defensive air driving. That would be the worst, and you do it pretty often, right?
And everyone's got their pilot's license at that point. Like,
yeah, right. You got to have something that can. I would imagine there's got to be a lot of training that would have to go in to be able to be certified to do that. Yeah. I think some of the other things that I saw that were up there that I thought were interesting, I saw Asus released a 3D laptop. Did you get a chance to see that at all while you were up there?
I didn't know. I saw some of the, like where I was pretty much in, I was mainly checking out like the metaverse, the XR technology stuff. Like I saw, like BMW's color changing car and all that sort of thing. Like I saw just because they announced like last year, they announced the kind of the black and white one. And then, now it's full color, which is just not. And, like there were kind of things I saw here and there that were sort of related to the PC side. There was like Razer? There was like Razer had a booth. They make kind of headsets and keyboards and like accessories and I think, other PC hardware. But I wasn't too close to, like the main hall for, PC announcements and, NVIDIA stuff, like all the other Asus and all that kind of stuff. I didn't see a whole lot of that just because I didn't have time. It was just too big to see everything. You can't see it.
You're going to be able to see. It looks pretty cool, though. So it's the ability to like create 3D images, but then they can actually show on that laptop itself. And then
cool.
Kind of similar to that, I saw there was a couple of tablets. I think Samsung had one that was out there where the tablet could fold, but it could also even extend, which was pretty neat, right? Yeah. And of course, that's where we're going with the foldable technology. Was there anything at CES that maybe stood out in a negative way, right? So I'm thinking like, what looked like the Commodore 64 that shouldn't have been there, but they were still there anyway because they probably booked their thing years ago or anything like that. Did you see anything like that this year?
Nothing. I wasn't really going there to be like, oh, what here's going to suck. Like, it's kind of, I had my sort of thing to kind of get through and see the stuff I had on my list. In terms of stuff that looked, I don't know. I mean, at CES, it's kind of, it's a well-known thing that a lot of the time what you see there is a sort of, maybe a proof of concept, or not even a proof of concept, like a kind of
like MVP,
just an idea,
minimally viable product, really.
Exactly, that sort of thing, and even then, it's like as to how viable they actually are is kind of up for debate. Like there was nothing I saw that I was like that's stupid. Like why would you bother? There was a lot of stuff. There was one floor there that was like. It wasn't like negative, I guess, but it was very much like it was almost the component manufacturer sort of hall, I guess. I don't know. It was on the upper floor of one of the levels, I think in the Venetian. And, you'd walk around and it was like, it was almost going to like a really high tech sort of night market sort of thing. And, like in a more like, I mean, I don't know if we covered it in the last one. Like I used to live in China and they had these sort of malls where you go to and you just get lost for like, an hour and it would just all be indoors and you just basically all had all these vendors selling, like accessories. Like it could be like a phone case or it could be like a Bluetooth headset or speakers, or it would be like a kind of power bank or something like that. And they almost had that sort of thing at CES. So it was like, and like nearly every company was based in Shenzhen as well. So it was like Shenzhen Microelectronic LCD backboard company, or like Shenzhen, fire safety protocol company. They all had Shenzhen in their name, which is kind of how you could tell. But like, so it wasn't a negative thing, but it was very like, it was in a way, it felt like a lot of the companies were like, oh, we need to go to CES. Just A, because they have to, or B, like actually it probably was a very valuable, space for any component manufacturer to go and to attend. And the thing that I actually really liked about that was more for my own industry of, VR, AR and mixed reality. Again, I was there with a colleague, we were walking around and we were you sort of got lost in this maze of LCD manufacturer company or like TV remote control manufacturers or just any technological accessory you could think of. There was a company up on that second floor that was making something towards that sort of area. But in amongst all that, there would be like just a hidden away like mixed reality company or like a VR sort of accessory provider. And, just when we were kind of going to be like, all right, we'll call it here. There doesn't seem to be anything else. We'd be like, oh, there's like a VR headset over there. Let's go check that out. And it was just consistent, like the whole floor, every like 20 stalls you saw upstairs, you would get to one, just as you're about to be like, okay, it's just TV components now. You'd be like, oh no, there's like a guy there's a company, they made like a VR firefighting training accessory, and it was like a glove. I can't remember what they were called, but it was really cool. Like they made, and it was this glove, and it kind of had this like heat and cold pack on the hand. So if you were, in a fire, and they had a demo, like if you're in a firefighting training simulation, and you put your hand near the source of heat, this little pack on your hand like instantly became warm. And then they had the demo. It was crazy, and like I've seen that stuff before, but I haven't really tried it, and I also haven't been able to experience how quick it can go from hot to cold. And they had, in the demo, it was like you picked up a snowball, and then you could pick up like a piece of a campfire, and the second you picked up a snowball, it was like ice cold on this pack. It went so cold. I guess they had like refrigeration fluid, but it was really small as well. It was like literally, like a quarter the size of your, like a cell phone on your wrist, and like, kind of Apple Watch sized piece of device. But it just went from like hot to cold like immediately. So yeah, like that sort of stuff was all just laid out and intermingled within the general peripheral, technology, whatever it was like. So yeah, it wasn't a negative thing, but it was more like I didn't expect to see that much like of almost like a market stall kind of experience. There was one stand there that literally sold just like, it literally could have been on like a market street, like, and just, they were just selling like yeah, like I say, like everything like Bluetooth speakers or like these little like accessory like pug dog things that had like a kind of power bank thing. I don't know what it was like, but it was just unexpected, I guess. And then a nice surprise to see all the VR stuff within that. So yeah.
I bet realistically, those guys, the reason why they do that is one deal at CES could probably make their entire year, or one relationship that they build at that time. So you were talking about the haptic feedback on the hand, right? So I thought one of the cool ones that I saw was, now granted I wasn't there in person, but OWO had a demonstration where they were showing people getting shot by bullets, and you can feel it go in and go out. I just think that's the coolest thing right now. And like you were saying, for the one that you tested out was like for firefighters. This would be one that would be great for military or law enforcement to be put in those dangerous situations. Know what it feels like, but also not know what it feels like in real life time. I just thought it was interesting watching some people's feedback. They're like, you can literally feel the bullet go in and feel it go out. Did you get to test any of that fun stuff at all?
I didn't test the OWO or OO. I don't know how you say it. Like, I didn't test that one. I saw their booth. I tested haptics for the first time, which was honestly, that's one of the coolest demos I've had in VR. Like, there's a few things kind of every 18 months that I get to try out, and it's like it really changes the way I sort of see what is possible. And the haptics demo was one of the coolest ones I've done. Like, it was, I don't know if you know haptics, but they're a haptics company, and they have these. They're pretty big gloves. They, these kind of like huge sort of gloves you put on. They've got all these like strings attached, and there's like the fabric has like pressure pads in them and stuff. And it's basically, their demo is designed to sort of allow you to pick up like a virtual object and feel it. So they have the demo was really cool. It was this little kind of farmyard sort of, what's the word? Like a little farmyard sort of scene, a kind of miniature toy style thing. And you could basically, you could go in and like brush your hand through like the wheat field, and then you would feel the wheat kind of resist on your hand. Or you could like pick up this little, like a cow. I don't know if you could pick a cow up, but like you could pick certain things up, and they had these like clouds, and you could squeeze a cloud, and it would be, kind of a spongy sensation on the glove. And it was all done through the gloves. Like they would simulate, force feedback resistance to your hands. And then, there was one point where like you can pick up a fly swatter, and then you can bend this fly swatter, and, you feel the resistance in this hand of the handle is a bit firmer. And then this hand's like the plastic end, and you could bend it. And it was just nuts. Like, and it's funny how that stuff works, because I tried haptics things, not haptics things, haptics, just generally the technology, from a company called, Tactical Haptics back at AWE in like 2019. And they had these controllers. And they basically had these like pads on the edges that kind of moved up and down, and they had 3 of them, and you grip that, and it kind of gave you this force feedback resistance. And that was another sort of moment where like, this is really cool. And haptics was, just a very different type of controller, and it was your whole hand, and it was just extremely impressive. There was one point where in the demo, like a spider like jumps onto your hand. And it was like a really like poisonous looking spider. The girl there asked me like, Sam, do you like spiders? I was like, I hate them, but like, it's not real. Like you kind of have to, that's one of the things you have to tell literally like, this isn't real. Like, let's try it. And then this like poisonous spider like jumps on your hand, and it sort of moves about a bit, and you can feel it. You can feel it. And I was like, this is so gross, but it was like, it was really cool. That was one thing. I was just like, this is a, ridiculously good demo. I think they
do that too with when you were talking about bending the fly swatter, being able to, because that's such a tactile feeling in your hands, of feeling that bend. I wonder how they pull that off. But those are the types of things that really, once we get those down, like the little things like that, like you're saying, touching wheat and so on and so forth. That's when those games and training programs are really going to go to that next level, because you're just not, when we get to that Turing side again, when we could really not be able to tell reality from, virtual reality, man, we are getting so much closer, aren't we? It's like,
and it kind of, I mean, this leads me on to like one of the next cool things. Like I think I might have said in the last time we spoke, we've got these, you've got all the sensors that we're trying to emulate in terms of VR, and well, not just VR, sorry, in terms of a fully immersive experience. So you've got the visual side, wherein you want to trick your eyes into thinking this is real life what I'm seeing, and in terms of mimicking how, crisp and clear your own eyes can see the real world. I think we're already there. There's headsets like the Vario headset, for example, which just has, their main tagline is like a human eye resolution device. And I've tried it, and it is like, it almost seems clearer than real life. So visually, I think
20/20 vision, but in VR on the Vario side.
Yeah, and it's just so visually with that, visually, like we can recreate how real the real world looks. It's just like, obviously you have to wear a kind of heavy headset on your head. That's, if you can ignore that, then fine. But if you, again, if you boil all these things down to their end goal of like, this is indistinguishable from real life. Visual, we've got audio. I think, you can pretty much emulate real life. You can have spatial audio experiences or like an augmented reality audio demo just in itself. I did one, I think it was like a year and a bit ago. It was from a company called Darkfield Radio. And it was one of the most profound AR experiences I had. And there was no visual aspect involved at all. In fact, they tell you like, go sit in your room, put a blindfold on, put the headphones in, and like just shut all the doors. And it was one of the best augmented reality experiences I've had. And it was all just, you just do it from the app in your room, or like one of them was like you had to go sit in a car. So I was like sat in the basement in the garage in a car, hoping no one would come in and just see me like sat in this car with like a blindfold. Someone did, and I looked like an idiot, but it was a very cool experience. So audio, visual with there, audio with there. In terms of touch, like the haptics things, again, if you boil this down to sort of 20, 30 years, 50 years down the line, like there's, of course, we're already 50% of the way there, and that you can emulate, how something feels to pick it up. And the only thing is like, the weight of an object, that's still sort of, I don't know how you do that. You probably need like a full exoskeleton suit to give you the weight resistance. But in terms of pressure and like feeling a sort of, a cube or whatever it is you're holding, you can do that now. And it's just a case at this point of miniaturization. You've just got to shrink the technology so that it's, just more kind of, easy for users to use. So again, haptics, touch, we're pretty much there. The next one, is like smell, I think, like taste and smell. And I know they're kind of, I think taste and smell are two different senses, right? Despite being very,
but sense of smell highly lends itself to the sense of taste.
Yeah. And in terms of smell, there was one that I tried from OVR technology. And again, I think I brought them up last time. They just released a new like product at CES this year. And it wasn't like a VR smell device, which was very cool. Like they have, I tried that again last year, and that was a very, very convincing and cool piece of tech. This was like a little, it was almost like a kind of Bluetooth headset, but it just sort of came down to about here. It looked like almost like a kind of air traffic controller, like mouthpiece. Pretty much like a helicopter pilot's kind of mic sort of thing. But it wasn't quite that bulky. It just sort of sat behind your ears, and then you had it here. And then you watched a video on a mobile phone and it was through their app, and this thing would like kind of pump out a smell like it was just close enough to your nose that you would smell it like immediately. And it was just really cool, like to the point where if enough people, were to buy this headset thing, and, again, this was like a kind of beta version, like not proof of concept because they are releasing it, but it was like the sort of beta version before actual release. But again, you can see if it miniaturizes, you can almost kind of get it to like a, tiny sort of strip at this point. And you'll be able to text your friends a smell. I'm not even kidding. Like that is so how it can work. And you can design your own smell in the app. They have these sliders where you can sort of be like, oh, I think it needs to sound more natural. Sorry, it needs to smell more natural, or it needs to smell more, I don't know. I can't remember what the sort of options were to choose, but it was just really cool. Like just how something like smell, which you wouldn't think would really fit in a technology sense in terms of like, oh, do we need that as part of a tech experience in your everyday life? But it was like, man, it was very convincing to be like, I can see people wanting to use this, and smell is so intrinsically tied to your olfactory senses of, smell are so intrinsically tied to your memory. And, a big part of what OVR do is, like PTSD treatment, for example. So they have like their whole kind of healthcare client side of things where they, they help people with PTSD, whether it's like a veteran from, like a war, and their smell that triggers them is, like the smell of burning rubber, and they can recreate that smell. And then they put this person in a VR experience, and then they have the visual of like it's a Humvee getting blown up or something. And maybe this is their sort of past trauma. And, they will be in this experience. They will have the smell of burning rubber, and then it will send them back. And that's kind of, that will trigger like whatever the response is, like it could be a panic attack or just, kind of, I don't know what it is, but they use that to sort of help people work through these experiences. Right. And so there is a valid use for it, certainly on the medical side, but just, literally being able to text your mates like a smell, and, you could kind of use your imagination as to what you kind of want to text people, but I'm pretty sure they limit that side of things, to be honest, but it's possible. Like,
the cool thing is, so I got a chance to interview Aaron, who's the CEO of OVR, a couple of weeks ago. I want to say it was maybe late last year, and the episode should be out in the next 4 or 5 weeks. Cool. So one thing that was cool that he said on there was that all of the smells in the world are made up only out of a handful of different smells. Don't get me quoted wrong on what the number was. It was like 7 or 11 or 13 or something like that. And you mix all of those smells in different proportions to make recreate any smell that's out there, right? So the other cool thing about OVR was that it's geo-based, right? So if you're inside of VR, if you move closer to a fire, you would smell more of the fire. If you move further away, that's so interesting and so cool. And they're really only one of the companies that are doing that now. There was another one at CES this year. Armajoin, I think, was what their name was. They're doing another technology, but OVR, and that's what Aaron, the CEO of OVR, has done his entire life. He was a sommelier. The guy literally smells for a living. I can't do it now just because of allergies, but that's my burden to bear for the rest of my life. He's got that one on lockdown, unlike myself.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's cool. That's cool that you had him on. Like, again, OVR stuff, like it's another one of those moments where I was like, this is a pretty profound, immersive experience. And like you say, it's like spatial smell, basically. And yeah, I did the demo with the campfire, and it kind of takes you through this thing, and you can pick up like a marshmallow on a skewer, and then you can just like move it closer to your your virtual nose, and you smell it. The more, if you move it away, you can have a marshmallow in one hand and like a rose in the other hand. You smell the rose, and immediately you smell, like the smell of roses. Then you move the marshmallow. You can flip the rose over, and it smells of like the bulb. It smells of soil. The earthy ones, actually, they're the best ones because they smell so real, right? Like and it's you'd think it'd be hard to recreate, but like they've done a really good job of recreating how it smells to be out in nature, or like like the smell of like cut grass, or like just kind of damp rain. Like the rain ones are really, apparently with that, I can't remember where I read it. It was like it might have been the OVR guys telling me there's a certain chemical in the smell of like wet rain or something that's like in it, it's a really sort of in parts per million sort of levels, like I don't know what it is.
It's ozone.
I don't know what it is, but it's humans apparently are really highly attuned to smelling that one individual scent. So like something like wet grass, I think I could be completely wrong on this, but I remember reading it somewhere. And yeah, basically like that one smell, we have like a crazy receptor for it in the human nose or whatever. And we're able to smell this one thing like so much better than like other, it just kind of hits us in this way. And so that was one that was really cool to kind of recreate. Is this, I guess they need hardly any, of the chemical, whatever it is, to make that smell. But the other cool thing about their consumer scent device is it lasted for ages. I can't remember how long they said, but it was like months. Like you didn't have to refill the cartridges for months. And that, they weren't sat there testing it for like 8 hours a day, pumping out smells, but like an hour's use or a couple hours. Yeah, exactly. Normal usage. Like it was months of use that you got from just like one cartridge pack, which I thought was cool. Cause yeah, I sat down with those guys at CES, like they gave us a private demo of the thing, and it was cool. It was definitely the smelliest meeting I've had. Which was, like a nice kind of change, and that's what CES is about. You go and try these things that you won't see, really anywhere else. Like it is this, very much a flagship event for just the tech industry as a whole. So you could be in the back of like a bulldozer or like a mining truck 1 minute, and then you're like smelling something the next minute. And just, exactly, yeah. And it was just very cool. So OVR for me was like another one of those things on that sort of spectrum of vision, sound, smell, touch, and I guess taste is another one that I don't know how we're going to do that. Like that's the only one.
We actually have smell-o-vision now, though, Sam.
Yeah.
How cool is that? We actually have it. It really exists in the world now, which is so cool.
Yeah, and it's you could literally say like smell this and like send someone send someone the smell, like just again through the OVR app. It was very cool. So it's just nuts to think like where things are at now. Like it's I still can't wrap my head around it. And there are times, and I don't want to sound like a kind of conspiracy crazy theorist, crazy all this stuff, but you boil these things down to their end goal of like, can you trick the human mind into thinking these things are real? And that whole argument of like, are we in a simulation? Like, I think I probably went into this last time, which is why I'm really reluctant to go into it again now, because it makes me seem I'm like pushing this agenda. But I find that fascinating to think like there is a point, where we won't be able to tell. Like you throw all these things together, you put the Vario headset together, you put the haptics things on, you put the smell in, and you put the audio, the spatial audio, and it will be very difficult to tell if, especially if you're like raised in that sort of thing. You've got pretty much all the sort of stimulation you need, all the sensory stimulation you need. It'll be difficult to tell what is real and what's not. If you boil it down to its end point, the technology is already at this point. Of course, in 50, 100 years time, like you won't be able to tell. And
realistically, think about it. We're not even that far away from it now, Sam. If I were to knock you out, put you on some sort of standing machine where you're on one of those universal running pads to where you can walk and run in any direction, put something over your head, put OVR technology underneath you, all I got to be able to do is throw chicken into your mouth every so often.
Never, none the wiser. No, I know, it's nuts. It's like, it makes you think, just films like The Matrix and stuff, you're like, wow, that's super dystopian. And the closer we get to actually being able to, achieve that, like, I don't know if you've ever done those float pods, like the sensory deprivation pods, right? Like that's something we do for pleasure. Like we go to sit and just like float in a pod with no stimulation. Yep. Like, on the flip side, you could do the same where you have all the stimulation. Again, it's like Minority Report. That's probably one of my favorite films for, just into
these things.
Yeah. And because I think I was like Steven Spielberg that directed that, right? Like, and Spielberg just generally like he seems to have a very good eye for like where this stuff is going. He did AI and he did Ready Player Me, and it's like all these films, just like I think he gets it. Like you should get him on the podcast next time.
I'll just give him a holler. I'm sure he'll have no problem.
Following the Always Sunny podcast footsteps and throw him on in that way. But yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Sam, it's been great talking to you again. It's crazy. It's almost 40 minutes into our interview, and that's how quickly it always goes every time I seem to connect with you. I do want to thank you for being back on the show. If our audience hasn't had a chance to go read Sam's review of the Argo AR glasses, I really highly recommend it. They're going to be kind of in that comparable range of the new InReal Air glasses that are out there in that $500 range, but I don't know if we have a price yet on the Argos, but they're going to be comparable in size and weight and things like that. But if you want to check that out, go to auganix.com. That's AUGANIX.com. .org. I'm sorry, .org. AUGANIX.org. Excuse me. I'm sorry about that, Sam. And of course, I do want to thank our sponsors, Kincannon XR, for sponsoring our podcast. You can find them on social media at Kincannon XR. And you can find our podcast on socials at ETIB Podcast as well. One more time for our listeners at home, please take a quick moment, go like this video, go check out auganix.org, and most importantly, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. If we can get to 1K subscribers, I'll be out there with Sam probably next year. We'll go drink a beer and go make fun of all the people who shouldn't be there. But we'll go do lots of live interviews as well. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode with the return of Sam Sprigg. I'm sure it won't be the last time he's on the show because it's always great talking to you, Sam.
Good talking to you.
Anything else to tell our listeners before we go?
No, other than, my own write-up of, my favorite things, specifically in immersive tech. That'll be, that's going to be on Organic's website as well. So check that out if you feel the need.
Look forward to it. Hey, Sam, whenever you get that shot, shoot it over to me. I'll put it in the episode descriptions as well. For everybody back at home, thanks for tuning in as always. We're going to talk some more emerging tech next time.